The Canadian Agri-Food Policy Institute is driving bold policy solutions for a resilient Canadian agri-food system and building a stronger future for Canadian agriculture. Visit capi-icpa.com to discover how.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147 at Sirius XM. Shaun Haney, your host here on this Tuesday edition of the show. Thanks so much, everybody, for making RealAg Radio and Rural Radio 147 a big part of your workday. Also, a huge shout out to everybody listening out there on the RealAg Radio podcast as well. Okay, today we're jam-packed. We are fully loaded from front to back. We're going to have some great discussions. And from those discussions, I also want your insight and perspective. So who's in the lineup today? We've got CAFTA's Michael Harvey will be with us. Lindsay Smith of Real Agriculture had a chance to talk to Mr. Harvey coming off CAFTA and their stakeholders' big trip to Washington, D.C. to talk about the future of North American trade. Very important discussion for many of you out there in the Real Agriculture audience. And we also got a special treat. We'll be joined today by the Deputy Secretary for the USDA. It is Deputy Secretary Stephen Vaden will be with us, talk about some of these trade deals the U.S. has been working on. What about the affordability crisis that the White House is in really endeavoring to really tackle? That involves some agricultural tariffs for sure, and a whole lot more. I'm looking forward to chatting with Deputy Secretary Vaden today on the program. Also, today, we're going to hear from Jay Whetter, longtime friend of the program. Known Jay going back a long time in both career in media. He's the editor of Canola Digest. He is also in charge of Canola Week, which is coming up here the first week of December. He's going to chat about that. And we're going to talk about kind of maybe where does canola go from here? Okay, now, if you have any feedback based on what you're going to hear in the discussions here today, you can send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. You can also call the RealAg feedback line or text it, 855-776-6147. I do want to give you a bit of an insight. This is a bit of a strange week. Of course, we are here on Rural Radio 147. The station is based out of Nashville, Tennessee. And, of course, it's U.S. Thanksgiving week. So our schedule's a little bit disrupted, but here's what's going to look like for all of you very loyal audience members. Wednesday, we're going to have a mini RealAg Issues panel. Lindsay's going to join me. We're going to talk about a bunch of issues that are impacting the world of agriculture like we always do on a weekly basis. We've also got Ed Brzezinski from Cargill tomorrow talking about the markets as well. Thursday, Farmer Rapid Fire will run as normal for U.S. Thanksgiving. And then Friday is going to be a special one-on-one interview with John Stackhouse, Senior VP to the Office of the CEO with RBC Royal Bank. So looking forward to chatting. Yeah, I think everybody that's a loyal listener to the Friday program is going to really enjoy the conversation with John Stackhouse. Let's take a break. When we come back, we've got Michael Harvey of CAFTA standing by right after this. Time for a product spotlight, joined right now by Dwayne Briand, North Central Alberta Territory Manager for Cantera.
CS4100 has been tested in farmer trials across Western Canada in every territory, and right from the beginning it was fast out of the ground, lots of vigor, covers the ground with nice leaf, and then gets up there and gets to flower before the competitors. 4100 is a very high yielder and has done very well across all of our trials.
What do you have for those that are looking for true flex?
We have our brand new CS3400. It definitely has been something I've been waiting for in North Central Alberta because we have a very big clubroot issue. One thing that this variety brings is brand new clubroot resistance package to it. It brings that mid to early maturity, and it has a really nice high yield potential. It is its first year out there, so it's going to be a limited launch.
So if you're interested, book early. If somebody wants more information about Cantera seeds, where do they go and what do they do?
Go to your local retailer who sells Cantera seeds, or you can go online to cantera.com.
I get to spend every day talking to farmers in the ag industry through RealAgriculture.com and RealAg Radio. But nothing is more fun than speaking to an audience live and in person. If you're planning an ag event, book a Real Agriculture speaker to make it a successful and memorable experience. Email shaney@realagriculture.com and you can book myself or any other Real Ag personality to speak at your event. bring your audience all the fun, insight, and energy of real agriculture. In the midst of significant global and domestic upheaval, we have an opportunity to leverage agriculture and food as a strategic driver of economic growth and prosperity for Canadians. Join the agriculture industry leaders in Calgary December 2nd through the 4th to explore how Canada can meet the moment and unleash the true potential of Canadian agriculture and food. Visit growcanadaconference.ca to register today. Okay, let's get to our conversation that Lindsay Smith of Real Agriculture had with Michael Harvey of CAFTA.
I'm Lindsay Smith with Real Agriculture, and join me now, it's Michael Harvey. He's the Executive Director with the Canadian Agri-Food Trade Alliance, fresh off a very long flight home from Washington, D.C. Michael, thanks for joining us. Tell us about your trip. Tell us who was all down in Washington. We're excited to hear what happened.
Thanks, Lindy. So very interesting trip. We went, 11 of 12 CAFTA members were there, so almost the whole organization. We were in Washington from Monday to Wednesday, meeting with a range of people, some congressmen and senators from both sides of the House, the aisle, as they say there, with some administration members, the USDA, the Department of Agriculture, and American agri-food stakeholders as well.
Now, this is, I'm going to guess, one of the most important meetings you've had in a while of this scope and this scale. It's also about 6 months since you had meetings like this. You did head down to Washington in April. What was the difference between April and now?
So I'd say first the pace of change in the U.S. political system can be a bit much sometimes to grasp, and it's really important to go down there and feel things on the ground. When we were there in April, it was the period of the Liberation Day tariffs, a lot of talk about Canada-U.S. Trade deficit from the Trump administration. Now it's a different external world where there were these recent elections in some states and cities. And a very different environment, people talking about things that didn't exist in April, Epstein and the ballroom and things like that. Things just changed so fast in Washington.
Now, you also mentioned, meeting with representatives from both sides of the aisle, so Republicans, Democrats. Is there a big difference between who you met with in April and who you met with this past week? Like who was on that list?
Similar groups, but we decided to concentrate more on Republicans this time. I'd say we were more 50-50 the first time, and this time we met more 80% Republicans. And the reason why is that the Republicans obviously have more influence over the administration's decisions. And frankly, the Republicans are more in play in the American system, where they could vote one way or the other, or they could speak up more or less. So it's more strategic to meet with Republicans in general, although it's important to get Democratic perspectives too.
Mm-hmm. Now, from most people's perspective outside looking in, obviously, for your membership being trade dependent, it is all about that. We do have the review of CUSMA coming up. Was that, the main focus of all these conversations, or where did some of these conversations go?
So both times we went down with a message that Canada and the U.S. produce food together, and that's better for Americans. We focus our message on Americans when we're in America, and concentrate on the fact that American producers get high quality, lower cost inputs that make them more competitive abroad, and to produce lower cost food for American consumers. So we concentrate on that message, but given the fact that the USMCA, what we call CUSMA review, is upcoming, we focused our comments in that context. And in that context, what we've been saying is the CUSMA provides the framework that allows American and Canadian producers to make business decisions in the most efficient way, that what people need is stability, and CUSMA provides that framework of stability. And
how did that land? Because we're certainly seeing this week, seeing some of what was submitted for the USMCA review, some of the comments from agri-food and agriculture, sort of, supportive of USMCA, that it works for the American market. So how did that conversation land with some on either side, really?
So the conversation landed very well. What we really see is that, well, first, there was an open letter. As you mentioned, there was support from the U.S. agri-food sector. There was an open letter signed by 124 U.S. agri-food organizations calling for a 16-year renewal of USMCA with limited changes. That was news, good news. Frankly, when we were down in April, almost nobody from the U.S. private sector was speaking up on tariff issues. People were just keeping their head down, worried about how the administration could react if you said anything. We've seen movement on that recently, and this letter from U.S. agri-food sector representatives was a big part of that. We also heard that representatives, including Republican representatives, are also sending letters to the administration expressing support for USMCA and its importance. So there's definitely a vibe shift, to put it in that way.
Yeah. So, and certainly it does feel like there are several sort of things happening, and you mentioned sort of off the top, that the sentiment has changed certainly since April. Now, obviously, USMCA CUSMA is a main focus and for your membership. What about outside of CUSMA, though? Are there sticking points that some of your members are having to grapple with right now?
So the sticking points are not really on our side. What there is a White House and administration that's very focused on some issues that are outside of the agri-food sector. And in Canada, it's been the cases of the cars, the steel, the aluminum. And that's obviously a big part of the conversation. That's before the Supreme Court in the U.S. right now. The agri-food sector is a sector that has not been the focus of what the president's been doing when it comes to Canadian agri-food, right. But you'll have seen that tariffs were put on the agri-food products of other countries. And a big piece of news from last week was when the administration lifted the tariffs on, in a broad sense, products that the United States doesn't produce. So there was a lot of talk about coffee, about citrus, about different things. My read of that is that the president's seeing that affordability for American consumers is something that's a big focus, something that's politically difficult for the administration to manage, and he was responding to that. So while that decision doesn't affect us directly, it definitely shows that the wind is blowing in the direction of being concerned that tariffs cost the American consumer, so they cause an affordability problem.
And so that is, one of those key components that we're hearing from some of these representatives out of the U.S. is that, the recognition that the USMCA CUSMA deal means that American producers or American companies can be more efficient, can do better with sort of this Fortress North America idea. For your membership, I would imagine certain members more than others really depend on the certainty of this deal. So going forward, hearing that sort of affordability piece, hearing, that there is support for USMCA going forward, how are you feeling sort of going into this winter now, into these next few months on sort of what the focus will be for your group and what you may see happen in the next few months?
So we're going to keep focus on working with U.S. counterparts, because I think it's a lot more important for U.S. political representatives to hear messages from Americans than to hear messages from Canadians. That's a lot more strategic. We can play a small role, but they're playing a much bigger role. We can provide them with information that helps them do so. The people we met with said, look, it's very helpful for you to come down here and educate us. And they really underlined the fact, look, it's hard to keep our attention on things. What I was saying about just the amount of noise in the U.S. political system, it's a bit overwhelming when you only go down for 2 days and you're used to Ottawa, which seems like a busy place when you're here, but looks pretty sedate when you go down to Washington and walk around those corridors in Congress. I think our messaging also always has to be about bringing the conversation back to economic realities. And the economic reality is that if we produce food together, decisions are made in the most economically efficient way, and that's going to lower costs for producers, that's going to lower costs for consumers. That's going to make Canada stronger. That's going to make the United States stronger. We want to concentrate on these positive messages about just how the trading relationship is good for both of us.
Mm-hmm. Okay. We'll leave it there on the U.S., but of course, let's, if we can, just touch on outside of the U.S. for your membership. What would be sort of the top 2-3 sort of discussions outside of the U.S. discussions?
So, I mean, every commodity is different, but one thing that's obviously huge is the question of China and the tariffs on canola and pork, the fact that beef is still shut out. So we've been watching with interest the Canadian government working on getting that relationship back on track and how China is reacting. Some of our members are extremely active on that. Of course, you speak to them on your program sometimes. So that's a big one. Mexico is a big one, both because it's part of the CUSMA discussion. It's a trilateral agreement. We think it's important to keep it a trilateral agreement, that North American integration is a positive thing for all three countries. And I mean, geography and supply chains, look at how there's a Canadian Pacific Kansas City Railway that goes from Canada all the way down to southern Mexico. We can't drive to anywhere other than the United States and Mexico. Mexico is a big country with a growing middle class that provides interesting opportunities. The Indo-Pacific continues to be very important. Look at the Canadian government wrapping up negotiations with Indonesia on an economic partnership agreement that's going to be tabled in the House of Commons soon, starting conversations with the Philippines. And maybe it's time to start paying more attention to other regions. We've seen the Prime Minister in the United Arab Emirates. The Gulf states are important places too that maybe we haven't put as much attention to over the years as we should.
Mm-hmm. There was a question on Friday's radio show that Shaun asked about. We should probably be asking Prime Minister Carney about canola crush expansion in the UAE. Just, for reasons. Anyway, so putting that out there, I think it's a good question. We do know that a lot of product flows through there, and probably pretty important. So glad to know it's on the radar and on the list. All right, we're going to leave it there. Michael, thank you so much for joining me here on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
That was Real Agriculture's Lindsay Smith talking to Michael Harvey of CAFTA. When we come back on Real Ag Radio, we got the Deputy Secretary of the USDA. It is Deputy Secretary Stephen Vaden joining us right after this.
Ready to take your oat game to the next level? Try CDC Endure from Alliance Seed. CDC Endure oats are consistently one of the top yielding varieties in the Manitoba, Saskatchewan, and Alberta provincial yield trials. With strong standability, excellent disease resistance, and excellent end-use quality, CDC Endure might be the variety for you and your farm. Available from authorized Alliance Seed retailers. For more information, visit allianceseed.com.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hepner and Lindsay Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM. And welcome back to Real Ag Radio here on Rural Radio 147. I am really pleased right now to have our next guest in. First time on the program. We're talking to USDA Deputy Secretary of Agriculture. It is Mr. Stephen Vaden. Deputy Secretary, it's great to have you here.
Good to be here with you, Shaun.
Okay, lots happening right now in agriculture. I guess right off the top, let's start. What's the update on when we're going to hear news, the details of this farm bridge assistance that Secretary Rollins has been talking about?
Well, the Secretary has announced we're looking to make an announcement in December. As you know, the government was shut down thanks to the minority for 45 days, the longest government shutdown ever. So that would delay us in the natural course. But then in addition to that, the president was not shut down when Congress wasn't providing money, and he was going all over the world making new ag trade deals, not just with China, although that's the biggest one, but Southeast Asia, South Asia, even countries like Uzbekistan, and more recently in Central and South America. And we've got to take into account that new data and that new demand that will be coming in across a host of agricultural commodities as we look to what type of assistance will be needed.
Any details on, like, that's a good list, but what does it mean for agricultural exports? Because one of the things that I've been hearing from the farming audience is concern about agriculture kind of being on the periphery. You know, a lot of talk about automobiles and energy and planes, but what about ag? Where does ag fit into these new deals that you're talking about?
Well, all I can say with regard to that is who's ever telling you it's on the periphery, they haven't actually been in the negotiating room. Because when Secretary Bessent and when Secretary Lutnick and when Trade Representative Greer are meeting with countries, and it doesn't matter which one it is, the message is very simple. If you want to do a trade deal with the United States, and it doesn't matter what type of trade deal you want to do with the United States, you've got to allow our farmers access. And if you can't do that, there's no use in our continuing discussions. And that's why every single deal, every single framework you have seen has had an ag component.
Just going back to the bridge, the aid package, just for a second, how do you decide on whatever the top line number is going to be? How is it decided which commodity? How does that flow and how does that get allocated? Because a lot of tension right now on soybeans related to China, but there's a lot of hurt right now in the South, especially when you look at things like sorghum and cotton specifically.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head. Do you focus solely on harms caused by trade, or do you look at a greater set of harms, not all of which are caused by trade? Now, you mentioned sorghum. Sorghum is actually much more exposed to China than soy ever has been. Yeah. 80% of their exports go to China. For soybeans, it's never been more than roughly a third. So if anyone has a right to jump up and down about China, it's sorghum. And strangely, they're not the ones who have been screaming. But when you look at broader harm, things like cotton, rice, these are commodities where their harms are not necessarily due to trade and certainly not due to China, but they're definitely not doing well. And so the question is, with the limited amount of funds that we have available, because we can't just print money here at USDA, we have to have it appropriated to us. How broadly do we want to go, with the understanding, of course, that the broader you go, that affects how much harm for each individual commodity can be covered. Similarly, the more narrow you go, you can solve more harm for a fewer number of commodities. And that's the trade-off that we'll have to consider.
In that list of countries, I don't think you mentioned India. That's one that I know a lot of farmers in the United States are watching very closely because they see a lot of demand opportunity there.
Well, India is probably the biggest market out there for which we have been, as of yet, unable to crack that nut. And one of the reasons why we haven't been able to crack it and why we don't have a trade agreement with India is because we haven't been able to reach accord on ag. And as I have mentioned, if a country wants to have a trade deal with the United States, they've got to provide access to our farmers. India isn't there yet. Therefore, it doesn't have a trade agreement with the United States at the moment.
Yeah, and now your two closest trading partners in geographically and economically, Canada and Mexico, are there certain provisions or things that USDA is looking for there when it comes to those talks being on and off again?
Well, with regard to Canada and Mexico, we're encouraging all of our producers and all of our producer groups to take part in the public process that will kick off next year in terms of reviewing the United States, Mexico, and Canada agreement. There is a public process that will include public hearings where ag, as well as all the other stakeholders, are going to be participating in panel hearings before the United States Trade Representative's Office. With Canada, you probably already know the list. We've got dairy. We've got concerns about their taking American spirits and alcohol off the market in their provincial stores. And we have some concerns that have popped up recently as trade disputes have gone on between them. In Mexico, we've got a host of other concerns, including corn and whether they will continue to abide by the prior USMCA panel agreement, which says they cannot restrict American corn's access to their market. We've got tomatoes. We've got sugar. We've got concerns about China using Mexico as a situation to transship goods that are really Chinese in origin, but are claimed to be Mexican in origin across the border. There's even more to talk about there. But what's most important, as far as I'm concerned, is that ag's voice is heard. Fortunately, our trade representative is very attuned to ag issues. That's why he's having this public process. And I hope all of your listeners, whether they're part of the local farm bureau or part of any particular commodity group, will encourage their ag organizations to participate.
You know, tied to tariffs, a lot of focus right now on affordability. It is one of the number one concerns for Americans right now. We did see the president drop the tariffs on Brazilian beef, for example. That's going to have an impact on ground meat coming into the country. Where can USDA and even producers themselves, where do they fit into trying to help the president here solve this issue around affordability?
Well, obviously, we like it when as much of what we eat is grown or raised here in the United States. It becomes very difficult to do that with the ever increasing cost of production. That's why you have been seeing Secretary Rollins, as well as the president, focus on the cost of inputs. And for me, there are two particular areas that whenever we go on the road, the secretary and I, we hear about. It's fertilizer and it's farm equipment. Those are gigantic portions of any farmer's cost portfolio. And we need to take a close eye at how increased concentration in those two markets and individual decisions that, for example, farm machinery manufacturers have made, limiting what farmers can do when they purchase agricultural equipment from them. I mean, it's really become not even a rent-to-own type situation with some of this agricultural equipment, where they tell you where you can buy it, what parts you can put on it, and that you can't repair it, all of which has the ability of giving them pricing power. And so these are things that we need to take a very close look at, and I'm very grateful the president has directed the attorney general to do so.
Where does the steel and aluminum tariffs fit into that? Because, you know, the Association of Equipment Manufacturers and some of their members have talked about the impact of that from a cost perspective on that farm machinery at the end of the day.
Well, I can tell you that when you look at the farm equipment manufacturers, there's no tariff on service. There's no tariff with regard to which parts you choose from if you're an individual producer. And there's certainly no order from the President of the United States saying you cannot repair your own piece of equipment and that you can only buy a piece of farm machinery from the one dealer that is closest to you. Those have nothing to do with tariffs, and yet they all give the equipment manufacturers dramatic pricing power. And we have seen the price of farm equipment outpass inflation. We've also seen that with regard to fertilizer. And I think that's telling because those are the two input markets which have the greatest concentration when it comes to the number of possible manufacturers or suppliers which farmers have to choose to deal with.
One of the commodities that's got a lot of the president's attention as of late is the price of beef. One of the variables in, you know, what some have called like a perfect storm from a supply perspective, depending on maybe perfect, maybe not a proper description, depending on which side of the equation you're on here, but is the closure of the border to Mexican cattle coming north. Timelines on that, obviously, that's something that the secretary has been working very diligently on.
Well, it's got to be driven by science. We eliminated the screwworm in this country in the 1960s, and we sure as heck don't want it back. On the other hand, we're cognizant of the fact that because we have the smallest cattle supply, the smallest cattle herd since the 1950s, that's having an impact not just on consumers, but on huge corporations like Tyson, which, as you know, just announced on Friday the closure of a 5,000 head of cattle a day facility in Lexington, Nebraska, Absolutely horrible news for that small town of 10,000 people. 3,100 people lost their jobs with that announcement.
Wow.
You've got more than 1,500 additional who are losing their job as a result of the Amarillo Tyson plant going from 2 shifts to 1 shift. And that's all because we don't have enough cattle in this country to currently meet our production capacity. So beef, even though it has been depicted by some as a simplistic decision, it really isn't. Because in order for the supply chain to work, we need every cog in the wheel successfully taking part and making money. That's the farmer, that's the packer, and that's the grocery store. And of course, we want the consumer to pay a fair price that they can afford to pay. And at least a couple of those cogs right now, the consumer and the packer, are currently coming out on the short end of the equation. But we want American farmers to make money, and we want American farmers to build their herd size. And all of this is going to result in a series of policy decisions that we have to balance, focused on encouraging farmers and ranchers to increase their herd size here in the United States, while simultaneously trying to ensure in the shorter term that we don't have more announcements like we saw from Tyson on Friday, and we don't lose our processing capacity here in the United States to process the steaks we all like to eat.
And that timing that you're talking about here, that's one of the challenges with cattle is it's not poultry where you can change the direction of supply in pretty short order. Cattle's a much longer cycle, as a lot of our audience, and you know very well, it is one of the variables that presents a challenge here. The Packer loss, as you just described it, which is substantial and led to that Tyson plant closure. Talk about that in the face of the timing of the investigations into collusion from a Packer perspective. I know that's outside of your guys' department right now, but does the timing of that match?
Well, keep in mind a couple of things. Tyson doesn't just do beef. They're also involved in pork and poultry. The same for some of the other large beef packers. And when you expand it to all of protein, you can look in public federal court decisions. There have been multiple settlements and even findings by some federal judges that have gone to where the federal judge makes the decision, gone to trial, as it were, or gone to summary judgment, where we have findings that the antitrust laws have been violated. And we can't ignore that either. Two things can simultaneously be true. It can be true that on the beef side, the packers may be on the losing end of things, but when it comes to larger protein, poultry and swine, there are things to look at. And so it's helpful to keep in mind, even though the focus has primarily been on beef, that beef may be what's for dinner, but it's not the only thing for dinner. And we've got to be focusing on the entire protein picture in terms of ensuring that farmers are getting a fair deal.
Deputy Secretary Vaden, to wrap up here, I know you've got to run here, but the Secretary Rollins has talked a lot about the coming golden age of agriculture. What needs to happen for that to transpire and for farmers to be like, yes, it is the golden age of agriculture?
Well, first, we need to remember that in 2026, in the fall of 26, all the provisions of the One Big Beautiful Bill Act kick in. That means we will have a new safety net primed with reference prices that actually reflect the current cost of production that will be permanent law. That is thanks to the Republican Congress and the president that goes into effect. And what we have to do to get from now to October of next year, a little less than a year, is what we're focusing on in terms of bridge payments. Looking at larger scope, we need two things. We need increased domestic demand, and that means more biofuels. And we need to continue racking up the RINs and trade deals because it can no longer be acceptable that American farmers are discriminated against. And one thing I'll point out on trade, Shaun, while all of the focus from the popular press has been on China, I would encourage your listeners to pay particular attention to all the non-China trade deals. Vietnam, Pakistan, Japan, Cambodia, Uzbekistan, the Central and South American regions. These deals represent new demand. These deals represent true pluses in the column. that when applied on top of the baseline of China of 25 million metric tons, for example, of soybeans going forward, starting next calendar year and every year for the remainder of the president's term, represent actual growth in sales. And it's building on those incremental deals involving not China, everybody but China, that's going to make the difference. And then if we can add on top of that something like E15, greater use of biofuels like soy and biodiesel, which the EPA's proposal under the Renewable Volume Obligation will do, and talk for the first time of reallocation. This will really make a difference to the American farmer and begin to add up. And you've already seen that the markets note that, because before these deals came online, the price of soy on the futures market, as you know, was 10 and change. We're now looking around 11.40, 11.50. That's a $1 increase in the past couple of weeks. That's real money. And that adds up very quickly when you're talking about bushels, and that's the direction we need to go.
Deputy Secretary Vaden, really appreciate you joining us here today on the program and look forward to our next chat. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shaun.
Hey, we'll be right back on RealAg Radio, Rural Radio 147, right after this quick break. Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
I'm Lindsay Smith, host of The Agronomist, and I want to thank you for tuning in for over 200 episodes of our beloved little program. Join me Monday nights, 8 p.m. Eastern on YouTube for our live and interactive agronomy Q&A. Each week, our guest panel will handle some of your toughest agronomic questions live, streaming on YouTube, Facebook, X, and RealAgriculture.com. Tune in Monday nights or go to RealAgriculture.com/agronomist and sign up for our email notifications and don't miss an episode.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio 147. Hey, make sure you check out Grow Canada Conference, which is coming up here December 2nd through the 4th in Calgary, Alberta. You can find out more by going to growcanadaconference.ca. But that's not the only thing that's happening that week, everybody. There's also Canola Week going on, and here to talk about it is Jay Whetter of the Canola Council of Canada. How are we doing today, Jay?
Hey, Shaun. Good to chat with you. Hey, I was a little worried that you were going to lead off with a plug for Grow Canada and then forget that my event is on the exact same time. But you got that in there right on. You nailed it. Different
stakeholder group. There's a bit of a different group going to each one. So, and you know what? That is a busy week. There's other stuff.
Yeah. Like it is a busy week, and I've always wanted to go to Grow Canada, but I always have Canola Week on. Yeah.
Well, so as the editor of Canola Digest, you probably should be at Canola Week, Jay.
Yeah, that's right. And I've got some duties on the planning side of things. I'm always kind of offering my 2 cents on the periphery, but this year I'm taking a more active role in the program. I'm also moderating a bunch of stuff, which you're an expert at. So I borrow your skills as much as I can. I'm asking for sponsorships, which we're pretty close to our goal there.
Good.
And I'm also trying to send lots of personal emails saying, "Hey, are you coming to Canola Week?" So it's kind of weighing on my shoulders, the content and the having people show up. So I really appreciate you taking time to chat with me, Shaun.
Yeah, no, for some people that have not been to Canola Week before, what is Canola Week, and mainly who should be attending? Like, you know, for people in our audience, they're like, well, I've heard about it, or maybe, you know, I need to find out more about this. What's the elevator pitch?
Okay. It brings together researchers and agronomists for presentations on the latest research and innovations, what's going on out in the fields. We have panel discussions about canola profitability this year. We have a bit of a profitability theme, and I'm going to dig into this a little more. But you wanted the elevator pitch to start with.
Okay,
but I think it's a 3-day networking opportunity to just talk about what do we need for canola research. And you've got this innovation series going on right now, so you've got innovation on the brain. But what do we need in the canola world in terms of innovations? And maybe stuff's out there that we just haven't adopted yet, or maybe this is totally blue sky. thinking. But those are the kinds of conversations that we want to have at Canola Week.
Well, and I think, Jay, canola is a good example of a Canadian innovation, and the purposes of things like Canola Week is not to rest on the crop's laurels.
No,
like where does this crop go going forward? It's not without challenges. There's disease like verticillium and blackleg and clubroot. Yeah. There's obviously marketing issues related to China, for example. Yeah. But this is a crop that, let's be honest, has added tremendous prosperity to the farm gate. Yeah. If you look at what's happened in the past 10, 20 years.
And it continues to surprise people and frustrate people. Let's be clear. I mean, you talked about flea beetles and how are we still dealing with flea beetles after 25 years of this being a problem? Like how have we not solved that problem? And then cabbage seed pod weevil showing up in eastern Saskatchewan and Manitoba in a big way. Like it was finally at thresholds in Manitoba this year. No, southern Alberta, where you're from. I mean, they've been dealing with cabbage seed pod weevil for 25 years. But anyway, Canola Week started off as Keith Downey's day. That's the first day. And Keith Downey, one of the fathers of canola, still going at 98. Still on the organizing committee.
Of course he is.
And he's got a great mustache right now.
I would expect no difference.
No, and he's sharp as a tack. Like ask him about. Sorry, this is rabbit holes.
No, it's good.
Ask him about. Tell me about what happened in 1959 when you were like. He knows. It's amazing. Oh. It's amazing. Anyway, so the first day is Keith Downey Day, and it's just basically let's catch up on how the year was. And where are our marketing challenges? What are some of the things that happen with diseases, that kind of thing, just to catch up on the crop. The middle day is Canola Discovery Forum. That's the Wednesday. And that is traditionally the Canola Council Day, where we just kind of poll the room. What do we need to research? And we're discovering the shortcomings in our research. And day 3 is innovation. And it's almost like pushing, and it's really kind of digs deep in certain things. Sometimes it's way over my head. Like it's, genetics work that is like the little tiny, like.
Oh, I know what you're talking about, because I've been to Canola Week and I know, I've seen those presentations where it's like, I have no idea what they're talking about.
We have an amazing thing on day 3 this year. We have Allison Sundstrom. You may know Allison.
Yes, I do. Yeah.
NYA Ventures out of Calgary. She's a venture capitalist. She made some money and she's an agriculture experienced person. Yeah, she's running. She's doing a presentation on innovation and venture capital, and then she's moderating this startups pitch session. And this is Wolf Keller put this together. It's going to be a fantastic new thing for Canola Week. Here's one thing I should have mentioned off the top, though. The day this airs on your RealAg Radio is the in-person registration ended earlier in the day, but you can join online, so you can still register online at any time, and I'll give you the link at the end. But if you just look up Canola Week 2025, the event Mobi login will show.
Okay,
up.
so if I'm somebody that's listening to this, I'm like, that sounds really interesting. To go to the event. That is closed.
Yeah, like we may pad our numbers just a little bit, anticipating some interest because you've got a big audience. So we will set aside a few, but for all intents and purposes, registration closed earlier today.
So if I do want to, if I do want to register online, how do I? Yeah. Give me how do I do that over here?
Yeah. So do a quick search, Canola Week 2025. And you'll get it's a long URL, Shaun. I'll send it to you, but it's through Event Mobi. That's the registration body. So if you find Event Mobi Canola Week, you've got the right place.
Okay, and what's the cost to attend?
Online is $200. In person is $475.
Okay, and so if you do participate online. You get the full experience. You just don't get to go. Yeah. You just don't get to go drink beer with Jay Whetter after.
Well, this is the thing. Like, and you get the CEU. So there's 14.5.
Oh, good.
Credits if you attend all 3 days. It's like 5, and then 4.5. So if you do one, you can also register for 1 day. But the online $200 for all 3 days. And then you can just come and go as you want. That's the way it goes for online. Yeah. So like these, I was at an event, the Ag Extension event. I can't remember the name of the conference. It was in Guelph in October.
Oh yeah. That was a couple weeks ago, a month ago.
Yeah. And it was pretty good for a first time around. And I would go again, but I would suggest improvements. But I did a presentation, and one question was, so what do you think about event fatigue? And I said, yeah, I mean, and I don't know whether it's a COVID hangover or just what exactly, but people kind of got away from not attending things in person. And now we're slowly coming back to it. But now we're a little more discretionary. Which ones should I go to? If I'm going to go to 3 events a year, which ones will be the key? So Canola Week appeals to people, like I said, interested in research, interested in innovation. Let's say the 2 biggest groups who go are researchers and agronomists. Or CCAs, like anyone involved in extension agronomy. Those are the 2 big groups. And then we've got the chem companies, we've got the seed companies, we've got extension staff for the provinces, say universities, and then people like me, a few media.
So Jay, what you've been hyper focused on the crop of canola. How long have you been at Canola Council?
15, almost 16 years. Yeah, I can't believe it. Yeah,
right? That's wow. We're aging, both of us here.
Yeah.
Okay. So 16 years.
Yeah.
Where does this crop go next?
Yeah.
Right. Like, obviously there's the yield potential. But where do you see, what are you excited about? Where does this crop go?
I was looking through, I was going through a box of old clippings, and, my little column headlines. I was thinking, sometimes you feel like you're talking about the same thing over.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I know fully what you're talking about.
So where do we go? Are we adding acres? Not responsibly.
No.
I mean, and I think, that the whole farm, maybe this is where we go, is that we get the associations, like Team Alberta is doing this. Mm-hmm. We get the associations kind of thinking, what is the best for farmers, not just what is best for canola farmers. Because canola needs a good pulse crop industry and a good cereals industry on the prairies. We like the 1 in 3 rotation, 1 in 4 if you're in a bad disease area. I mean, that is just responsible farm management from Canola Council's perspective. So we're not looking to increase acres, but at least not much. Sometimes we hope we can keep our acres. So it comes back to this, of course, profitability. And the middle day of Canola Week is all about profitability, return on investment from research. And then I'm moderating a panel with agronomists and then a panel with farmers with the exact same questions. They're back to back. How do we increase profitability? What are the profitability challenges? So if you're listening online, the 2 hours after lunch on Wednesday might be really fun for you. Cool. And then send me questions and we'll network as much as we can with the online crowd. But so where does canola go? I was just talking to Rob McDonald from BASF about they had a research site in southern Alberta. Again, these are smaller plots, so you always have to take the yield with a grain of salt. But that reached 100 bushels per acre this year, and it was really dry. Farmers will know this. Not bad at seeding, and then dry until the latter half of June. And then the skies opened up and it rained and rained and rained, which is unusual for south of number 1 highway in Alberta. And so we got lots of rain, relatively moderate temperatures. It wasn't a super hot summer. I don't know whether smoke was a factor. It could have been. And then it was a manured field. But I just said to Rob, this, don't give me a sales pitch. Just give me, what's the agronomy? Just give me, what's the agronomy for higher yields? And I just think farmers are making the right decisions. I mean, I'm not saying, invest, do all these steps to get 100 bushel yields. Farmers know their limitations. But I just think somehow we can work together as a network to find a way to increase those canola yields. And of course, we know that weather is a huge factor, and getting all kinds of rain is a big part of it.
Mother Nature seems to always have the final say. We try to do everything we possibly can, make the best hybrid selection for our area, the best production decisions. We just need Mother Nature to cooperate. 24, she did not. 25, she definitely did, and the yields actually showed through very well.
So I haven't seen a number, and it should come out next week, I think, the end of next week, the latest estimate from StatsCan, whatever we want to think about that. Nice. But I think we're going to break the 2016 record for canola. I just don't see any reason why it won't for the prairies, which was 42.3 bushels per acre average. So I think this will be a year where we break that. Am I sticking my neck out and making a prediction? Yeah, why not? Hey, go for it.
Let her buck. That's right. Go for it. You got to take a stand on something, Jay.
That's right. Yeah.
Hey, encourage all of our audience to make sure they check out Canola Week 2025. It's happening the first week of December. Encourage you to check it out. You can register online, as Jay said, to go to the Canola Council website or Google Canola Week 2025. Jay, thanks so much for joining us here today. Really appreciate it.
Always love to talk to you, Shaun. Thanks. Talk to you later.
We'll be back on RealAg Radio right after this.
Hi, I'm Bernard Tobin, host of the Soybean School on RealAgriculture.com. Throughout the year on the Soybean School, we'll bring you timely agronomic video content from planting to harvest, from the latest agronomic research to the latest in production technology. Check out our massive video library on YouTube, RealAgriculture.com, or download the audio podcast versions wherever you get your podcasts. The Soybean School is brought to you by Mazik Seeds and Lalamon Plant Care.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
What a show today, fully loaded, front to back. That was great stuff. One of the things that stuck out to me is a little bit of a softening. You know, you think about the conversation back with that Lindsay had with Michael Harvey. You take those same stakeholders trying to go to D.C. back in the springtime, say like in March. There's no way they're even having any of those meetings. Like Canada, talking to Canada persona non grata, like stay out of it. So that's a really kind of an interesting thing for a bit of a signal there. Although, in talking to different DC contacts, a bit of the message is Canada, don't get too far ahead of yourself. The buck kind of stops at the White House. Good photo ops, good discussions, but the buck stops at the Oval Office. And really this comes down to Prime Minister Carney and President Trump. And if you look at all the other trade deals, all the other agreements, or I guess, trade truces that the White House has had, it's all been managed at the top as opposed to grassroots coming out of Congress. So that's I think there's a sort of a positive note on this, but also there still probably is recognition that there is a long ways to go in terms of some sort of trade truce between Canada and the U.S. And hey, listen, some of this is going to be dealt with in this USMCA CUSMA relook here in the middle part of 2026. Also appreciate Deputy Secretary Vaden joining us. Some great insights there. That was great to chat with him. That's somebody very much, in the grind of all of what's happening behind the scenes at USDA. So really do appreciate their team setting up that interview for us. If you have any feedback on today's show, send me an email, shaney@realagriculture.com. Thanks so much for getting real and getting connected with RealAg Radio. We'll chat again tomorrow. Cheers, everybody.